Spiderman, Spiderman does whatever a spider can. Oh fuck! Wow, has Spider-Man been making the rounds lately? With an animated movie, 4 movies in real life, 2 of them being cameos, and a video game. Forget spoons, Marvel's feeding you people by the barrel load. I'm a casual fan, clocking in briefly when a hero piqued my interest. It seemed Marvel has become a swirling vortex of heroes, so numerous you're bound to like at least one of them, or some of them. But they hadn't had much luck in the video game area, especially in recent. Ouch. But that seemed to have turned around back in 2018. Spider-Man on PS4 is amazing, and fuck am I happy I jumped it now, without having to endure all the shit movie tie-in games and second-rate garbage that was on the last generation of consoles.
Hey, there's my favorite aunt.
Peter, what a nice surprise.
Need some help?
Yeah, sure. Oh, there are some heavy boxes.
No. I mean, not yet. I mean, I came to, I just wanted to talk.
So, this is supposed to be its own story, no tie-in to any movie or comic as far as I know. In fact, it's supposed to exist within a PlayStation canon. Which is nice, though it assumes you know the who's the story is contained within the game. I got the gist thanks to enough exposition in the game, and there is an in-game codex if you want more information. As for story, the basic rundown is Spider-Man puts the big crime lord away, Kingpin. And then there's a power vacuum as a result, filled in by a criminal named Martin Lee and his criminal gangs of magical demons. Spidey has been Spidey for a while now. In fact, I think he's out of college. Great, straightforward, easy to follow. All of these things are a plus. The presentation here is great. Same for the voice acting and the graphics of the city, even on PS4. And besides for 2 crashes, it worked relatively flawlessly. It's amazing. The themes they use, the MCU's themes, it fits very, very well here.
You're free to continue your work in a secure environment.
The gameplay here is great. You can use the environment when you fight by throwing people into walls, bouncing off walls and hitting people, or hurling hard objects at people, which is my favorite. Spider-Man has an assortment of ranged abilities and close-up abilities, obviously. He can move around very quickly and dodge, fling people into the air. He has a series of different gadgets and suits, some being the Iron Spider or the Grappler. And my favorite were those 2 because they had a huge range of effect and they can get through those cunting blocking minigun motherfuckers who block every single attack you do. Besides that though, most of the suits and gadgets will range in usefulness or novelty, like concussion fists or the ability to call in Spider Bros, which is a funny name. The Quip suit and birthday suit, again, are also very novel. I was disappointed by the fact I wasn't able to get the birthday suit because it does sound like a fun challenge. But the core of what you're doing here is fun. The fighting is amazing. It's very vertical. You're dancing around the screen, dodging, fighting, hitting, taking weapons out of enemies' hands and flinging them at them, or using the environment to throw stuff at them, or throwing them into the environment, or pulling stuff down on top of them. All of it's great fun. The controls here are consistently accurate. They're very reliable. The upgrades go a very long way. And the gadgets here remind me a little bit of Rage 2, because funny enough, I got through this game and that game without having to have all the gadgets. So, as for the side stuff, The side stuff gets monotonous fast, and the DLC won't change much. You'll get burned out on this stuff pretty quickly, especially at the mirror side of all those logos on the map.
Check it out.
These challenges are really just for the sake of the multiple currencies in the game. All of them do have different currencies that upgrade different things, and they do enhance the gameplay in that way, but on their own, they really just serve as a crutch or as a form of padding.
Into a brutal assault on the city, and the casualties keep piling up. Last night, after almost killing Majiadon Hammerhead, Captain Yuri Watanabe was forced into administrative leave. Sources say she told the chief, "This won't stop me." Note, follow up on this later. Feels like this isn't the end of her story. Meanwhile, Hammerhead, who was pronounced dead at the scene, was revived and escaped custody.
So, the story of the main game is one continuous narrative, while the story of the DLCs is broken up into 3 paths, or 3 episodes, rather. All of it using the same world space, and you navigate this world space via web slinging. Spider-Man's trademark way of getting around. It's relatively simple, really. All you do is lob yourself high into the air, or if you can catch yourself at certain points, lob yourself directly forward for more speed. Either which way, it adds a layer of finesse to the system navigation. In fact, honestly, it'd be fun just to roam the city, just swinging around. That never stopped being boring for me. And if you learn how to use it right, you can even incorporate it into fights. Which is, I think, again, the hallmark of a good navigation system, one that has utility beyond travel. I love the open world game genre, but it tends to blur together due to the lack of interesting navigation systems. Oftentimes with the space between missions just serving as a commute. Honestly, this is an issue that I think permeates many of these open world games, and I think innovations have been taken to rectify that with good 3D maneuvering systems. A good 3D maneuvering system should be a game in and of itself. It should be fun enough to hold up the in-between of a game. And if you're going to have a long game, make that in-between shit really goddamn good. Because this is a video game after all. I'm a superhero. I don't want to be taking the fucking bus to work. I'm going to fucking swing, and swing some fucking more. Hell, this is one of the few times I even ignored fast travel. That's how good the navigation in this game is. And that is the hallmark of a good system. Other systems, I would say, that are similar, at least in principle, to having fun navigation is Days Gone, Just Cause, Dying Light, and Spiderman. Games with either a 3D maneuvering system or at least an interesting maneuvering system that adds a little bit of fun to the commute between areas. And like most, from time to time, I would just climb up tall buildings and swing around and skim as low to the ground as possible. The essence of a good maneuvering system is one that is a game in and amongst itself. Or at the very least, it can form the backbone of a game. Becoming good at it and learning how to take advantage of it to the point where you can incorporate it into battle. The story is good from beginning to end, and the cutscenes are very strong here.
I just talked to Craig. You are not the reporter he was sending. You don't even work for Heritage Arts.
Never said I did. Hi, Mary Jane Watson, Daily Bugle.
Many of the bosses here are ingeniously designed, as the game will put you into a variety of scenarios with large battle areas to actually navigate and play to Spider-Man's strengths. The best fights were the ones where you're in open spaces, while the worst were the ones where you're in closed spaces.
Give it up! You're never gonna catch me!
That's what you did last time.
I don't want to hurt you! You'll just slow me down!
Wow, that's considerate.
The UTs here are very repetitive, especially in some of the fucking boss fights, which they really don't belong in those. You do these a bunch of times in the overworld, and you'll do them a bunch of times in the campaign. Anyway, seeing the same animation again and again. But overall, the ending of the game had me tearing up as Spidey had to make a choice between Aunt May and pretty much everybody else. Of course, Spider-Man makes the good decision because he's fucking Spider-Man, but the acting itself was convincing enough. Being that as it may, when it came time to replay the game, I decided to be a spoiled sport, and I simply couldn't be fucked, so I turned off all the QTs in the game, and the game is a little more cinematic and a less interactive, but overall it doesn't lose that much not having the QTs. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to have QTEs, actually, if I'm being honest with you. Awesome! Yeah! Alright. Fuck you, puzzles. Just turn them off from the beginning. They blow. Why the hell are we doing this in a superhero game about web slinging? If I'm being honest, yeah, just turn them off because you can get to the action faster without so much dicking about.
From what we can gather, Project Olympus is an Oscorp and Sable-funded initiative. Bioenhancement technology meant to transform people into indestructible super soldiers. Hammerhead is ruthless and insane, and now apparently indestructible. But first things first, figure out where Hammerhead is hiding. The question is, what are we gonna do when we find him?
As for the DLC, it splits into 3 pieces called The City Never Sleeps. And it begins with Black Cat and ends with Spidey training Miles. Most of it was solid, and there was quite a decent little amount when everything was added together. One thing I'll say is, in scope and scale, it doesn't really outshine or improve on the main game. But I do like the closure we get on some of the characters and expansion we get on others. While the main game feels like the movie that pulls you in, the DLC has more of a comic book feel, which I actually liked a lot. Each story has its own character focus with Sable, Black Cat, and Yuri, all of them revolving around Hammerhead. The overall tone reminded me a bit of Spider Noir, or what I'd imagine it would be like, with the mafia, cops, lots of death, etc. And most of the presentation is on par, and the difficulty sees a huge jump. Just hours of me getting killed over and over again by the Mecha Mafia, by overwhelming numbers, and big machine gun assholes. It borders on frustrating, but it feels nice to web up the aforementioned minigunner and hurl him like a sack of shit at his friend's stupid face. If you ever buy this game, just buy the DLCs together, because story-wise, it would just be incomplete. And beyond that, the side missions get a new spin, but they have largely the same gimmick, like I said, with the involvement of Screwball, which again, fuck that fuck. Fuck that fucking bitch. She is annoying as fuck.
Well, if it isn't my favorite bug-themed superhero, ready for season 3?
Not really.
Aw, turn that frown upside down. We're bringing joy to millions of fans. In fact, I've got big plans this season. If we hit 50 million followers, I'll throw an exclusive party for my loyal fans.
The 3 episodes of The City Never Sleeps. The first one beginning with Black Cat, who ropes Spidey into helping her with her some stealing of flash drives. And she does this by tricking him that they may have a son together, or they might have had a son together in the past, which she totally lies about. And it's totally anticlimactic, which is the point, I guess. But hey, blue balls are blue balls no matter what the reason. It was funny too, the frustration and fear of a broken condom, you know. You could feel Spider-Man's fear. The only thing any man fears, really. Commitment. Am I right? Am I right, fellas? Anyway, Hammerhead, the second episode by far was its darkest. This was somewhat noirish as you and Yuri tracked down Hammerhead and the mob bosses.
we're safe. Great.
In fact, at one point, Yuri even goes rogue and gets into conflict with Spidey. But I'm gonna just spoil it. Wait for it. She just disappears at the end and nothing ever gets really resolved. She tries to shoot Hammerhead in the face. That didn't really work out. And yeah, we don't really hear from her again. Anyway, the story part that coincides with Mount Olympus is a plan for Hammerhead to take back the whole city. Using, again, Mecha Mafia. Out of them all, this has a really dark tone with all the mob and cop stuff, and especially with the cement stuff at the end when he tries to kill the other mob bosses. I do wonder why they pulled this dark stuff from the main game, honestly. I think it would have worked out if they used some of these darker tones in the main game. Not saying that it needed it, it just would have been interesting. With the third, it has probably some of the best boss fights in the game, and it had the hardest missions in general. I died so many times in this part of the game that I almost thought about just quitting. This part is mainly about the fight between Sable and Hammerhead as she tries to take back her Oscorp gear. Which was good. Having a strong typical girl character fight Spidey amid was fun, and their exchanges were pretty funny.
What happened to you? I thought you were a good guy.
I am good at what I do. But I am not a guy.
Lost in translation, I guess?
You know, these DLCs explore some pretty dark themes regarding war and poverty, which again took me by surprise, as in this universe, every drug dealer is a child rapist and the government spying isn't abused at all. And I like the ending with Miles pretty much being like a beginning of passing the torch as Peter begins to train Miles, pretty much hinting at who's going to be the star of the next Spider-Man game. As for my favorite DLC, I didn't really have one, honestly. They sort of feel like they should have all been a part of one package. You know, it feels very much like the main campaign. It has some stealth, a few boss fights, a lot of cinematics. The best boss fights were the ones in the last DLC, but I did like a lot of the battles from the second DLC. And the missions in which you follow Sable's jet were a lot of fun. I actually really liked those chase missions. They challenged me to go as fast as possible with the web slingers. But really, as said before, buy them together. Wait for a sale, because it's not that much on their own. They're not that much on their own. The episodic structure here doesn't make any sense because individually there's really not much there if you don't count the grindy as fuck side activities. Skipping them won't haunt you to your deathbed, I can assure you that much. Overall, this game is amazing. It's great, it's worth a buy. There are some issues though. For example, some of these issues that permeate the game is its structure. It has a very similar structure. I think it overemphasizes stealth like a lot of games right now do. Besides for stopping crimes, most of the side missions are disinteresting and even boring. The worst of them being the stupid OMG things from Screwball. My favorite were the events where you kind of stop random fights or events happening in the street, like say a chase or a battle between cops and the mafia. Those villains picked the wrong street and time of day to not get their teeth completely kicked out by a flying Spiderman. The QTEs and the puzzles are overused, sometimes in the overworld and sometimes during missions. The frame rate smooth with the occasional hiccup. The aiming and navigation can be a little wonky as you stick to pieces of the environment that I wouldn't like to. It reminds me of Assassin's Creed with that a little, though it works most of the time, and I would say it's more reliable than Assassin's Creed, especially since there's more of an emphasis on wide open spaces instead of precision navigation. The enemies do get old though, as you pretty much just fight goons, and then you fight Sable, and then you fight mecha goons, which pretty much look like Sable. And really that gets old after a long enough period of time. Anyway, the bosses though, they do show a hint of awesome design, say for Martin Lee, whose boss fight is pretty much all QTEs. The end was fine, but the whole fight prior dragged, and again the DLCs fell short and the episodic structure felt completely for its own sake. It feels like they wanted the double dip on those who wouldn't buy the season patch, which admittedly isn't priced that bad. It really isn't, and in fact on sale it's really worth it. It really, really is worth it. It's kind of a steal. The only suggestions I would really add is rip out 90% of the QTEs. And if you had to have the QTEs in there, vary up the animations a little bit instead of just repeating the same animations over and over. Also, I wasn't a fan of the sneaking fucking Spider-Man's chest in bright red and bright blue. The guy can be seen from 10 streets over. He's not really meant for sneaking. It reminds me of Days Gone again, with this weird over-focus on stealth, even though the game obviously seems like it thrives in battle. And for the love of God, make the DLCs longer. Or just keep all the DLCs in one package if you're going to make it this short. So my conclusion is, get it. It's pretty cheap. And if you find it on sale, get the ultimate version. It's a great package. One you should consider. I'm awaiting the sequel, so I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye, like, subscribe, and comment.
Love seeing you two together again. You always were my favorites.